we have already used up the time we allowed, but so we go on to directly question and answer, and so to two previous presentations, and presentation by John Psycho and also presentation by Mark Laverne. So anyone who wants to pose a question or make comment, would you raise your hand?
Okay.
Oh, so okay. Is there anyone who would you raise your hand if you
Yes.
have questions? Mm-hmm.
Professor Kiuchi, may I ask a question?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I'm
Please.
Masa Sugano from representing JETRO and the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry based in Africa, Joburg. I have a question to Mr. John Psycho, especially regarding France's involvement in security areas in Africa, which are non-Francophone speaking. In other words, I mean, France is deeply embedded security-wise in Sahel regions and other French-speaking countries. But sort of northern, the Cabo Delgado area, the Mozambican total interest sort of came to it randomly. It's not an area, it's somehow France is in, I understand, a situation where they have a strong vested economic interest without the historical content or the historical sort of experience in that particular region. And so how do you see France's role, France's expertise in dealing with the security situation, the insurgencies and the security situation in the northern Mozambican region?
That's a very good question, and Mark may have some insights on this as well. What I've seen in Mozambique, I mean, there's a couple of issues. First of all, the Mozambicans tend to be very skeptical of external interference, and so the Portuguese, for example, the colonial bias is still very much there. Talking to the U.S. Embassy, the embassy cannot get any traction whatsoever with the Mozambicans. And when I was there, I didn't come across the French being, at least from a government perspective, being involved in a significant way. I think they're in a wait and see mode. And also, I think they're going to be looking to operate via the EU rather than bilaterally. Because also, I mean, as you point out, this is one thing that you see, France does have defense attachés across the continent. They do have small operations, and I was in Uganda last year talking to the defense attaché there. They've got a small program doing mountain warfare. But really, Anglophone and Lusophone Africa is not, France's backyard. And so the issue in Mozambique too is that I also think that Total privately, and talk to Total, and I think they're looking at solutions around how to, whether it's capacity in the military or otherwise protecting their site. That is, again, it tends to be more focused on from Total itself rather than the government. So the long story short is I think it's rather uncertain. I think multilateralism is going to be the way in places like Mozambique through the EU. But yeah, that's the perspective that I saw.
No, thank you very much. I'm exactly the person who sort of has to do the planning from the energy side as well as the security side. And your insight on Mozambicans being very hesitant to foreign, especially Western powers involved. That I see that too from my conversation with the U.S. Embassy officials and military attachés. So it also means that we can't rely entirely on France or the U.S. And it's this role, as you rightly mentioned, the relative role of Japan becomes relatively higher because no one else has the political weight or the security experience in that particular area. Thanks.
Okay. And Japan is seen as quite neutral too, which I think is quite important, quite interesting too.
No, thank you very much.
Certainly.
Professor Shinoda, do you have any comments?
Thank you very much, if you allow me. Just briefly, thank you very much for wonderful presentations. I have enjoyed all the presentations. As regards the final one by Professor Mark Levin, under the title of Proliferation of Terrorism from the Middle East to Africa. Oh, by the way, my name is Hideaki Shinoda. I'm working for Tokyo University of Foreign Studies, specializing in international peace operations as regards their responses to armed conflicts. But nowadays, of course, we include the phenomenon of violent extremists especially in the African continent as well as in the Middle East. But in terms of the proliferation, well, let's say 10 years ago, we had a little bit more simplistic understanding that violent extremists, wave of violent extremists came from the Middle East to impact some of the elements in the Middle East, ranging from the Horn of Africa and the Sahel. But nowadays, as you have mentioned, we are observing more homegrown violent extremist activities in the African continent. And then it is spreading, let's say, to new areas like Mozambique and so on. And still, however, they have some kind of networks of elements in the Middle East, if not directly ISIS, Al-Qaeda networks, or some other linkages with the elements in the Middle East. This is really an intelligence affair. I'm just a humble scholar, so I haven't got any clandestine information concerning these elements. And then for everyone, it is very difficult to detect any kind of the nature or level of linkage between African violent extremists and then any other elements in the Middle East or North Africa. It's becoming loose and homegrown elements are developing. That is true, but how much so? And in what elements of linkages networks may still remain? It is very difficult to say. So if you have any observations as regards this point, like linkage, existing current linkage between the elements in the Middle East and through North Africa and to the Sub-Sahara Africa, Sahel region, Horn of Africa. I would like to hear about your views. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that question. I don't know if I heard perfectly well what you were worrying about or taking up. What I can mention that there are strong links between West Africa and the Arabic Peninsula, for instance, or even Iran. And these links are increasing. There are economic links, of course, but also ideological links. That is, the governments are playing their cards. I notice in Niger, for instance, there is an increasing presence of Iranian, that is Shia militants, which is very new. I mean, people are converting. They are somehow subject to growing influence of Iran, but also other countries like Qatar. They have investments in food security, for instance, near Lake Chad and other places. And of course, UAE and Saudi Arabia also have invested in agricultural development for their own sake, for food security, which has an impact on the population. And also the dispatching of Qurans, the aid for Ramadan, for the Eid. This is all very important. This is a war of influence between various Muslim countries from the Gulf, affluent countries from the Gulf. And lately with the COVID-19, there was a sending by the UAE of massive support in terms of masks and all these things that were needed by the local population over there in Africa. So you see, you can't escape anywhere in this time the competition of influence between various Islamic states, and the population is siding with one or the other according to its interest, or according to the capacity of these influential actors to promote their own views. But this is mainly based on interest, rather than on religious thinking, so to say. And this competition comes to cover the old Islamic structure of those countries with the Turuk, with the brotherhoods that were there for ages. So I don't know if I answered your question, but in terms of Al-Qaeda or Islamic State presence, I'm not sure it's so relevant. I mean, the matter is, do they gain followers? Do they gain, have they the financial means, or have they the credibility in order to get adepts, to get soldiers, to get the youth? And I'm not sure that it's so important and crucial in the balance of forces now in this area. The youth, of course, most of them, because they are deprived of their fields, of their animals, of any future, either they migrate to Europe or they join rebel forces. This is somehow basically the choice that they have.
I have something to add also on this point, if you don't mind. Yeah, for the linkage. First, I was agreeing with you, Professor Shinoda. I mean, before I was preparing something about Africa. But really, when I read more, I can conclude maybe 3-4 points also to add to my colleague, Professor Lavarney, for this kind of linkage. Like number one, Emirates Seaport Authorities. Okay, so now I think they have something to do with Senegal in Western Africa, and also some other seaports in Africa. So this is a very important economic linkage. On the other hand, just I was talking to one of my juniors a few days ago, who is still in the service right now, and we were talking about the Africa, the center of Sahel and Sahara fighting terrorism, something like that. I will remember its name, and I can even send it to Professor Satoshi. This is now, it's located in Cairo, in Egypt. And this center is specifically for training, crisis management, and other issues. It's for Sahel and Sub-Sahara to counter terrorism and for crisis, as I told you. And it will have a lot of things. It's training and operations. I mean, to observe, control, or something like that. And it's more involved by Europe and United States of America, with Egypt, actually. Infiltration of Daesh. Boko Haram is mainly, in Africa, right? And Boko Haram is more aggressive than Daesh according to the statistics of operations. But Daesh is more famous. If I talk about one more thing, when you follow NATO newsletters about Sub-Sahara, they consider there is difference between Daesh, which is the Middle East, ISIS, Islamic State in Sham and Iraq, okay, and Boko Haram in Africa. So NATO still have separation, but actually by some other specialists, it's taken different way. As I mentioned in my lecture, that several terrorist groups fled from the Middle East, and some of them went to Africa. Boko Haram pledged, recognized Daesh. They said, we are loyal to Daesh. And Qaeda became enemy for both of them. And if you don't mind, maybe I add something. And this, anyway, this is something like a linkage between both of them, because the Islamic State really is, you would like to have the true Islamic State in Africa and Middle East. This is the main goal, in Africa and Middle East, in front of the bad West, ideologically, here. So this is a big security linkage. And the good anti-ISIS is now Al-Qaeda. And the main problems between both of them, it's very, very ideological. Like, for example, Al-Qaeda says about who does not believe in God, that he should be killed. ISIS different. Any Muslim does not believe in ideology of Daesh, even Muslim, Christian, whoever, should be killed. Suicidal operations. Qaeda believes that suicidal operations can be done just for suicidal operation, that I go with the build of explosion and then explode someplace and explode myself. Daesh said this is haram, this is no, shouldn't be done this way. He should go fight. And every one of the Islamic fighters of ISIS, they have the belt with them. After he finishes immunization and still their enemies, which us, like for example, Egyptian armed forces or whoever, then I finish now my immunization as ISIS, and they still alive, or some of them, then I go and explode myself with them. So this is something like end. So this kind of difference of ideology still remaining, and that's why they are fighting themselves, and they are fighting more and more, and maybe some of our colleagues talked about that. The fourth thing is something competition. It's not announced that much by General Murabitu, just mentioned in his map. As you are aware, there is a competition between some specific countries of sending gas through the tubes, through the pipes, I mean, which well known is Israel to Europe or Israel to Turkey. It has been mentioned also Egypt from LNG, liquefied gas, to send to Europe through Spain and Italy. But there is also another one which is still under other competition between Algeria and Morocco to have the African gas to Europe through Spain and Italy. And France maybe, I'm not very sure, but I'm sure about Spain. So there is also competition in making some kind of another way of linkage between North of Africa, Africa itself, which is the source of the gas, and the Middle East. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for insightful comments. I'm really impressed. So to say the least, I would say that the influences or linkages are quite multidimensional these days. So we need to explore these issues more intensively. Thank you very much.
Thank you for questions and discussions. So is there any other questions? Or any comment or any additional, comment from our presenters? Is it okay? So as always, we are overflowing the time schedule, so it's almost 30 minutes or after the plan time limit. So yeah, we could continue on and on, but I think now is the time for closing. So thank you very much for 4 of our presenters, and also many questions, discussions from the floor. Thank you very much for participation. Such an exciting topic, and such a number of audiences who until the very late, together with us, participated in this opportunity. So thank you very much, and we will see each other in the coming next month, and there's the fourth part of this series. So please check out the newly launched Rhodes website, and details are on there. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. See you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating, overcoming such a technical issues. Now we can cooperate, communicate with you from the luxury of our study room. So we want to continue on this kind of effort. So please keep in touch, and please, come back to our coming, event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Arrivederci, bye.
Bye.
Au revoir.
Arrivederci, grazie.